welcome back to the class, everyone. You all knew it was coming. We just got the Leia Lightspeed bundle, as well as some other bundles that are very helpful in unlocking her, so it's about time that we revamped our How to Leia guide. So once again, we will be looking at Leia, how to mod her, what team comps she should be used with, and what Zetas and Omicrons should be applied to the team and in which order. I felt it was necessary to redo our previous video. If you have seen that, if you haven't, it's also not very important. Because number one, the Lightspeed bundle is going to give you a few different things that we want to touch on. But in addition to that, in the last 7 months, the way that the Leia team has been used has actually changed a lot. In the sense that Lord Vader and Ahsoka have become quite the menaces on defense, and Leia offensively counters both of them really well under normal circumstances. So with all that being said, we need to be looking at Leia from an offensive perspective, not just a defensive perspective, which would have been the case a while ago. So the first thing we need to cover in that regard is going to be comps. One of the things about Leia that hasn't really changed is the fact that her core team consists of R2-D2 and Captain Drogon. The reason for this is that R2 is going to be giving a massive amount of stats to the whole team, and Drogon is really a perfect complement to Leia because, number one, CG programmed him that way, but because he deals a ton of damage, and her being one of the very few Galactic Legend tanks, they really complement each other well. So when it comes to 3v3, this is the comp you're almost always going to want to use, unless you want to split off one of the sides to go and do something really wacky with, say, Saw, using Drogon there, because you know your opponent is always going to use the same consistent Leia counter regardless, and you don't need the team for offense. Now, when it comes to 5v5, you are going to maintain that core of those 3 units, but you're going to have some options on adding your 4th and 5th units. Now, offensively, right now, the best comp seems to be this Rogue One duo of Admiral Raddus and Jyn Erso. And there's a few things that they offer to the team, but this is all going to revolve around Admiral Raddus' Zeta. We'll talk about that more later, under transmission from Scarif, where it just puts in this really nice kind of throwaway, totally not throwaway line of, while Admiral Raddus is alive, Jyn Erso cannot be defeated. It has huge implications for the Leia team because not only do both Admiral Raddus and Jyn have the Rebel tag, so they can actually be used there without having to deal with a lot of the side effects of not being a Rebel character, but because they're on a team with R2-D2, who can smokescreen a character that he chooses, especially if you're using this team on offense, you can use smokescreen to put everyone into stealth, including Leia, and leave just Jyn around to be hit. The reason why this is great is because Jyn essentially becomes, while that stealth is up, a completely invincible tank, assuming you have the Zeta on Raddus that makes so that she can't be defeated while Admiral Raddus is alive. This is really great because not only does a lot of the firepower that would be going against your other characters go into Jyn, but Leia has this really, really nasty thing, I believe it's actually in her unique, where if it is an enemy's turn and they don't attack Leia specifically, she does a ton of things. Whenever an enemy's turn ends while Leia has Fearless, so she wasn't attacked, she gains extra max health, all enemies lose Mastery, Defense, and Tenacity until the end of the encounter, and Leia gains 4% ultimate charge. So by forcing your enemy to hit any other character that isn't Leia during those enemy turns, you are going to continually not only ramp up her own health and her ultimate charge, but also decrease the defense and tenacity on the enemy team. So again, this primarily works great on offense because R2-D2 will always leave the character out in the open that's the healthiest, which will not be Jyn if you were to leave this comp on defense. It's not a bad defensive comp by any stretch of the imagination, but I think you're going to have more results with Captain Rex and Obi-Wan Kenobi. I won't go into all the details of it, but Leia does give some really nice bonuses to Obi-Wan, as he is a Jedi Rebel tank on her team. Really, the Jedi tank was the only important part, but at the same time, you have to be a Rebel to work on the team. And then Krex is just disgusting. Krex does so much for any comp that he's put on. He has the Rebel tag, which is essentially enough, and it all boils down to both the special and his unique ability, where he's going to inflict tenacity down on all enemies, which all tenacity down cannot be evaded, by the way, and then on top of that, he's going to put daze. So essentially, he's just an AoE tenacity daze down, and then on top of it, he gets all of these bonuses that he will apply to himself, not the whole team, because it's not Phoenix, but even applying these bonuses to himself is awful to deal with. Once you start coupling the fact that your enemy is not going to be doing as much damage, which we'll get to later when we talk about the Zetas, with the fact that he's going to have a lot of recovery because he himself is a clone trooper from the Zeta, it makes him very, very hard to kill, so he can continue to be annoying as the battle goes on. So again, defensively, it's going to be Krex and Obi-Wan. Offensively, it's going to be Adarad and Jin. And if you're out there and you're really, really stretched on a roster and you don't want to break apart either your Phoenix or your Rogue One team, you can consider some of these other options that might not be in as high of demand, like Baze or Stormtrooper Han, for example. Stormtrooper Han does lose out on some mastery gains because he actually is a scoundrel, which Leia doesn't play as nicely with. But at the same time, if he can taunt and pull some fire away from her and have that similar interaction we talked about with Jin, that within itself is probably enough. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to do in this video, particularly with the Lightspeed bundle that is out there, is also talk about where you can use some of the other units, assuming you did purchase it. The first one being Drogon with Saw. Now, when you first get this pack, if you didn't get all of the other ones out there, you're not going to actually be able to unlock Leia immediately. There's actually several packs that are needed, assuming you haven't built up any of the characters yet. And Drogon was very specifically made to not only go with Leia, but to also go with Saw. If we pull up his Grand Arena Omicron, you'll see that he has a very specific part at the very end where it says, if the ally in the leader slot is a rebel fighter support, aka Saw, whenever Drogon scores a critical hit, all rebel allies gain 10% turn meter. So he was outfitted in that way, and the guy just does a lot of damage in general, so this is a great place. Mon Mothma was also an option, but to a slightly less extent. For what it's worth, I actually know, again, quite a few people who like to leave this on defense, and then they'll leave another like kind of junk squad with Leia on defense, trying to tempt their opponent to hit it with something that is either way too strong or way too weak. Lobot, who is also part of the pack, can go a sortie if you're using a sortie team. Really not much to write home about here, but he does work because of how they outfitted his kit when they reworked him. Chupio goes with CLS. You should all know that by now. You all probably do. Same exact thing can be said with Krex. And then shout out to Lando, I guess, who is in the pack. The reason why I'm saying you probably shouldn't, but you can use Lando with Mon Mothma is purely for the fact that Mon Mothma has a very unique stat sharing ability where she wants all allies to be rebel fighters. And Lando, different from, say, Princess Leia or Farm Boy Luke, does have the rebel fighter tag. So while he's really not adding anything to the team, he is at least not taking away stats that they could have had. So just an overall option. So those are the comps that you can start working on putting together, assuming you are getting this current Leia Lightspeed bundle. So now that we've kind of organized the comps out, we need to talk overall about the Zetas. And this, again, has changed from, say, a year or so ago because of the offensive viability of Leia. And it's going to come down to Leia has the three most important Zetas for her team, which is not necessarily odd. Now, if you're using her on offense, this is going to be wild. Bear with me for a moment. If you're using her on offense, I actually think her strongest Zeta is going to be tactical offensive. The reason why this matters is because it's going to apply call to action to all of your allies for 4 turns. The reason why that's such a big deal is because it is going to allow Drogon to ignore taunt for him to be able to get out and snipe one character and annihilate them immediately. The reason why that matters is because if you get stuck behind a tank, really strong characters like Hezra or Oppo will kind of just be able to do what they want to do while using the character on offense. So there are a lot of other Zetas that matter, but getting call to action, not only does it give a lot of offensive bonuses out there, but ignoring taunt is huge for the modern Leia team. Now, very much on the same level, but for different uses, is going to be the leadership, which really curbs out a lot of the attacking out of turn. So JML and JMK, they do okay against Leia. It's not overall great. Applying the Zeta makes it very difficult for them to win because they love to attack at a turn, and this specifically is going to give reduced damage for that, along with a few other things in there. And the Galactic Legends Zeta is just really important. It's almost really important for all Galactic Legends, but even more so when it comes to a tank. So those 3 should be your first focus. Depending on if you're using your offense and defenses, swap the leader in the special, and then the unique would come third after all the rest. Now, when we look at kind of the secondary tier, these are all still good, but not quite as important or as crucial as the first 3 that we looked at. So starting again with Leia for the second tier, we want to take a look at her Forever or Princess Zeta. And this is going to give a lot of recovery to the rest of the team based on the damage that she receives. So the text states that right there. At the start of her turn, all other rebel allies recover 100% health equal to 100% of the damage Leia received. meaning she's going to be able to keep the rest of her team more alive because as a galactic legend, she's going to be taking a ton of turns because her base speed is ridiculously high, even if you don't mod her that way. In addition to that, she will also be giving rebel attacker or support allies 100% bonus protection whenever they're dazed. We'll talk about that more when it comes to the overall modding for the team because health is going to be very valued because, among other reasons, health is pulled when a character gains bonus protection. So again, not the most important Zeta for the whole team, but it is really nice to have once you've gotten the more essential ones out of the way. Speaking of more essential ones, on the same tier is going to be Captain Drogon's basic ability. I'm not going to really talk that much about the unique because if you got this current Lightspeed bundle, you already got the unique Zeta as a freebie. But looking at the basic, you might think that it's a little bit underwhelming because basic Zeta or basic abilities just aren't really that good in the game in general. But when you look, the difference between the Zeta and not having the Zeta is everything. It goes from just dealing special damage to a slew of other things. One of the most important things in here, though, is adding an extra 50% damage. The reason why we want Drogon's basic ability to be doing a ton of damage, which is very different from almost every other team out there, has to do with Leia's tactical offensive ability that we talked about previously, where she's going to target a character to remove turn meter from. When she does that, on that character's next turn, they're going to get another 50% offense boost for their next ability. And if it's their basic, which is what we're looking at, they're going to gain an additional 2% offense for each percent of turn meter removed and ignore protection from that ability. So what we're trying to set up here, and again, we'll talk about this more when it comes to modding, is we're trying to put Drogon in a situation that when he takes his first turn and uses his basic, he can wipe another opponent completely off the board because he will not only be ignoring taunt, but he'll also be ignoring protection with that hit. This is one of the main ways that we've been able to deal with Hezra, whether he be on an Ahsoka team or on a Rey team, is with the specific shot right here. So again, not the most important Zeta, but it is doing something crucial if you play it right on offense. Next up is going to be R2. R2 is going to be here purely for his number crunch, which is going to add a ton of stats to the surrounding team. Again, without going into a ton of detail with it, Leia boosts R2 massively, and then he takes those stats and he hands them out to the rest of the team. I'm going to leave combat analysis for a later tier, because the team just has a lot of cleanses already. It doesn't necessarily need more. At least it doesn't need them that desperately. Radishes, we won't talk about this a lot because we already did when we were talking about the team composition. If you don't have the Zeta, you probably shouldn't even be using Radis on the team. This is what makes Jyn immortal, so you're going to want that. So that is the overall second tier for Zetas. Now moving on to the third. These ones are still good, they're just not going to make or break a lot of counters. And with Leia, it's going to be her basic ability, which actually does a ton. Not as much as the others, obviously that's why it's falling lower. And then Rebel Ambush, honestly probably the most underwhelming Zeta of her entire kit. It's a bunch of debuffs for one turn on an ability that has a 4-turn cooldown. You know, apply it, she's a galactic legend, you might as well, but at the same time, definitely leave it for last when it comes to her Zetas. R2's combat analysis, we talked about this earlier. The team just has dispels on other abilities now. This isn't as crucial. It's still nice to have, though. It still might bail you out. It's actually bad versus Reva because Death Mark, but I'm not going to focus too much on that. And lastly is Krex. Krex are not super important for him to function on the Leia team, but it does give him more speed and has that extra recovery that we talked about a little bit. So, again, not going to make or break counters, but they are going to make the team overall better. And then these ones are probably just not going to do anything at all. Old Bens, I don't want to talk about them too much. They're not doing that much. Like he gives a little bit more bonuses when he dies, which is kind of bad. And then he gets an extra taunt when he dispelled the first one. But it doesn't just keep coming back. It's only twice. Like, he gets the original taunt, and then he gets the bonus taunt, and that's it. It's not that good. And then Jyn, which just makes her immune to stun, and Rogue One allies immune to buff immunity. This would be higher if there weren't, like, a ton of other debuffs that also act like buff immunity. I think, like, Order 66 and Doubt and Shock, like, those all act as buff immunity. So if any one of those gets on Adrad, you can't stealth him. So it's, again, it's fine. You can apply it, but it's not going to be all that important. Now, finally, before we move on to mods, I do want to take a very small second to talk about Omicrons. And the reason why it's a small second is because the Omicrons for the Leia team kind of suck. The best one by far is going to be Captain Drogon, and it is really not that good at all. It is not going to transform the team like, say, Sabine or Harris would on the Ahsoka lineup in TW, or Embo with Jabba in TW. It's probably much more along the lines of, say, Chrysanthemum in GAC, if you're familiar with that. I mean, it adds 50% max health, which, I mean, that's nice. He's a character that you don't want to die, but at the same time, he's not a tank. He's an attacker, so damage probably would have been preferred. He becomes immune to ability block, which overall, I guess, is nice, but at the same time, his most important move is his first one, where he wants to use his basic, so it's kind of whatever. Dispels all debuffs from another random ally. Again, good, but R2 with his combat analysis Zeta that we talked about is going to do that anyway. So they're just... It does things. They're not bad, but they're also not going to, I don't know, he's not adding 50% offense to the whole team. It's fine. You can apply it. In the next category, we have Captain Rex and Jyn. These are worse than Drogon. But they're not entirely like dead last, just completely useless. They actually do something. When you look at Crex's Omicron, you're not going to be using Phoenix or Clone Troopers under Leia. But at the same time, Rex himself getting 60% extra health and 25 speed, that's good. I mean, it's not game breaking. You're not going to win more battles. I mean, maybe one, but it doesn't hurt the team. Same exact thing can be said about Jyn. When we look at Jyn's, it is on her unique ability, not her lead, which is nice. This is for TW. She's essentially going to be giving 30% max health to her and Adrad. Really expensive to apply an Omicron for, but it's doing something. There are some other things it does too, but it's conditional on the whole team being Rogue One, which it will not be if you're using it under Leia. There are some other Rebel Omicrons that you shouldn't apply, as the title says, just don't. And then Adrad and Admiral Akbar have leadership Omicrons, which don't really apply to the scenario, but because they're Rebels, I figured I would list them out. So that is Omicrons. And now finally, onto what everybody's been waiting for, at least what I've been waiting for, is going to be the modding for the team. As we previously mentioned slightly about the bonus protection, the team is going to heavily revolve around health because, number one, they want to survive. Leia herself is a tank. She's going to be able to want to tank the hits. In addition to that, they have a lot of stats being increased that all revolve around health. Also, she does true damage based off of her max health with her ultimate ability. She gives more max health through her leadership ability. Drogon gets his own more max health. R2 is going to get more max health. Crex gets more max health. There's a lot of max health going around that, especially with R2 sharing a lot of it, it's kind of a big deal, and most of the team is going to revolve around that. But looking more specifically on Leia as to what she wants, she would like health, and beyond that, speed, and then that's pretty much the end. One of the other things that you will see out there is people running a speed set rather than health sets on her. And while you can do that and find success, I don't believe it's ideal. The thought process behind it originally was when she was being put on defense a lot, SLKR was one of the main counters to her. In reality though, SLKR can still beat Leia even if he moves after her. So by chasing after speed, you don't really gain much. Not to mention, that whole interaction is pretty much dead in the water with Dre now on the scene and Leia being used more on offense. So going more for health, not only so that more can be shared to the rest of the team, adding more to her damage, but also adding more to her overall survivability without even listing things like the 2% increase that she gets every single time someone does not attack her. So I have actually vouched for a health primary arrow, triangle, cross, and circle. So as much health as possible, in addition to that, having also full health sets. The reason why I like health also more than speed is because if we can close the turn meter gap between her and Drogon, we can actually increase the amount of damage that Drogon will do on his first ability. The reason for that is because you get 2% offense per turn meter stripped, and if Leia is slower and Drogon is faster, then you get more turn meter to wipe away, and therefore more offense to Drogon. So overall, I'm not too concerned about her overall ending speed, just making sure that you're using full health sets with health primaries and adding what you can on after that. Next up, we have R2-D2, and R2-D2 is kind of a fun character. With the number crunch, also I like how I called him a fun character, and then he wiggled there. With number crunch, we really want to elevate both health and offense, and there are a number of ways to do this, and I probably won't tell you wrong if you try to do a different one than I did. You can run full health sets, or you can do one health set and one offense set. Either way is fine, he'll still be sharing those stats. And then when it comes to his primaries and secondaries, in a perfect world, I would like him to have 4 health primaries with a good offense and speed secondary. That's asking a lot. So if you have to make a decision and you don't have good health primaries with offense and speed secondaries to spare, just put on a health primary and then a speed secondary. We do want him to still be fairly fast because getting off both his burning as well as smoke screen are fairly important to the team. So you can see here I have opted out of the speed arrow for the health arrow because this one did have speed and offense. And then I was able to kind of do what I wanted to with the health primary and the offense secondary for most of these, but it wasn't the case with all of them. So do what you can. Ultimately, our goal is to get as much health and offense on R2. And I don't really love health percent as a secondary just because it pales in comparison to what health does as a primary, which cannot be said about offense. And then these other 2 ones, again, speed is good because ideally you would want him to take some turns to get off his special abilities. Next up is going to be Captain Drogan, a character that I've actually modded differently since our previous video. He's going to be mostly a standard attacker sporting an offense set and a critical damage triangle with a offense cross. The things that I've changed about him is I have actually changed him over to a speed arrow because, again, him being faster and having more turn meter when Leia takes her first turn is going to result in more damage for him. I'm also cheating because I'm using a 7% offense secondary, which is very close to an offense primary. So if you can get something close, that would be ideal. On the other hand, if you do have a very high offense primary, or rather a very fast offense primary, that's also doable. I also used to have a defense set on him. I opted now for a health set, and the reason why is I actually looked at his defense stat. It's garbage. It is one of the worst in the entire game. It's lower than Ugnaughts. So again, with everything the team is doing with health, just put a health set on him. Your other alternative, if you don't have a health set that you want to give him, is crit chance. He's a special attacker, which means that his special crit chance is stupid low. It's, I think, at like 40% or something like that. But, and this is important, when Leia gives out call to action, that will give a 50% critical chance increase, meaning that as long as you can get Drogan up to 50% critical chance, matched with that other 50, he'll be at 100. So as long as there isn't a crazy amount of crit avoidance, he should be able to crit reliably. So overall, fast, offensive, crit damage triangle because he should be critting. Now, taking a look at some of the 4th and 5th options for the team, Adrad is pretty simple. His whole job is to not die, because if he does, then this whole clause goes away because he won't be alive, so she can be defeated, Jyn Erso that is. So his mods are pretty simple. Defense sets, health primaries, speed really doesn't matter. Arguably, it's bad in some circumstances because you will want the smoke screen to stay on him longer. But yeah, just make him really, really tanky. That is not ideal for his own leadership, but if you're using him specifically under Leia, that is the way you should be going. Jyn really doesn't matter. She's not a good attacker. She doesn't really do that many things relevant as far as overall support goes, and she's kind of immortal. So I put a speed set and a potency set on her, neither of which are very good, but she does like to crit every now and then and can maybe get off a revive at the right point with this. So I don't know, crit chance isn't completely terrible, but ultimately her modding just does not matter that much. Krex is also very simple. He pretty much just wants to be around to be able to put out tenacity down in days, so he just needs to not die. Health is nice for not dying, so I have a speed and a health set on him with health primaries. Nothing really too out of there. And then Old Ben, I've not been very strict on his mods either. He's a tank that has some good debuffs, so health, defense, and potency have been kind of the way to go. I found the potency primary here, along with a potency set, more than sufficient. It gets him all the way up to 110%, at least with the rest of my modding it did. And then a defense set and a health set. Again, he wants to survive, he wants to put out debuffs, those are fine. Speed isn't the most important thing on him, but he also doesn't hate it, so I guess aim for that as a secondary if you want to. So that is going to be the video for today, guys. Let me know what you think, what you found in your own experience of having used Leia or having seen Leia, what is good and what is bad. Thank you guys for watching, though, and as always, stay awesome.